Hello, and welcome to the Achieve Optimum Health Summit, where we explore how to prevent and reverse chronic illness. And today, my guest is a gentleman with a very interesting background. After having a life-changing health experience, he has changed his career from electrical engineer to chiropractor. And following an internship under Dr. Alan Goldhamer at the True North Health Center in Northern California, he joined the staff doctors at the True North Health Center. And then he moved his practice to Orange County and he is a founder and director of the Fasting Escape, a small inpatient fasting facility. If you want to learn about that, you can visit www.fastingescape.com. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nathan Gershfeld. How are you today, Dr. Nathan?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much, Angelina, for having me.
I'm so excited to have you over at this summit. So you have such an interesting story behind you, and can you please explore what happened to you and what made you change your career from tech field to medical field?
Yeah, so I got interested in health for a career. I was in engineering school. I was supposed to be an engineer. My dad was an engineer. I went to school to be an engineer. I graduated as an engineer. I just didn't want to do it. And so my story started, it kind of starts back when I was a kid. Me and my sisters, I would eat a lot of junk food, and my grandmother, who was actually, at the time, she was going to be a chiropractor at about 60 years old. And in chiropractic school, she started to learn about health and wellness and how diet played a major role in health. And so when I was in my junior year, my junior and senior year, my last years of engineering school, I got a health problem. I went to the doctor and they found a tumor in my neck, and the tumor was lodged into my was kind of growing in on my thyroid gland, and I also had an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So I didn't know what any of those things meant. So the first thing I did was ask my grandma what I should do, and so the first thing she said is go look at your diet. Because I know what you've been eating. Because I know what you've been eating. So she said, "Go look at your diet, get some resources, start reading about this whole thing." And what she was basically saying is that if you get as healthy as possible, your body can take care of most of these things. So that put me on a journey of reading as much as I could. Now this was about 15 years ago. So there wasn't as much information on the internet. There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't a lot of these resources online. And so it was really just reading books and going to conferences, going to classes, and doing the best that I could to figure out what was going on. And kind of what I came up with everything is that if you do the healthy things as best as you can, and you do them very well, then the body can actually recover from many, many things. And so what I'd learned was that what my grandma said was probably true, which is that diet and lifestyle have a huge impact on my health condition. So this resulted, so I tried all sorts of different other things, but I ultimately, what I stuck with and what made the most sense to me was the basics, which were taking care of a clean diet, getting good sleep, getting good exercise, making sure that I'm exercising appropriately, that I'm breathing clean air, that I'm not drinking sodas, which I was drinking a lot of, not eating junk foods, not doing anything other than clean living as much as I could, getting some sunshine. And so that's ultimately what ended up happening. But in the meantime, when I was learning all this and I was trying all kinds of different other things, I stumbled on True North Health Center, which is a fasting clinic up in Northern California. Now, for the listeners that have never heard of what a fasting clinic is, you're in the same boat as I was when my grandmother told me about it. And I looked up what fasting was, and it said you don't go without food. You go without food, or maybe you just drink juice for a few days to a few weeks. And so I was kind of clueless about it, but I was at the point where I was going to try anything because I really didn't want to do any surgery. I didn't want to go through any other the things that my doctor had wanted me to do. I was a bit stubborn in that way. So I read about it. There was a lot of differing things, but they ultimately were saying that if you do a water fast, or if you do a fast, if you stop eating the foods, then your body has the chance to heal itself in many different ways. So gut bacteria replenishes. Your taste buds get really sensitive, so you can actually eat healthy food afterwards. You can drop weight. I wasn't overweight at the time, but it was another thing that can help. And so there was all these different things that kind of appealed to me. The overall philosophy was that you're freeing up energy from your body from digestion and directing it towards healing itself, which is what the body does best. So I went up to True North Health Center, did a few days of water fasting after talking to Dr. Goldhamer. I was supposed to do a lot longer, but I didn't last that long. But I did a few days of water fasting. And then that actually helped me get back onto a healthy diet by getting my taste buds nice and sensitive, very, very acclimated to healthy foods, so that healthy foods actually tasted really good. So I got on the healthy foods, did another ultrasound of my tumor, and it turned out my tumor had shrunk. Okay, it shrunk by about 50%. So that was really interesting because I didn't expect that to happen. I was hoping it would happen, but I didn't expect it to happen.
Was it, on the front side or the back side of the neck?
It was right on my thyroid. The thyroid gland is a butterfly-shaped gland that kind of wraps around the front of your throat. And there's two lobes on the right. There's one lobe on the right, one lobe on the left. And right behind the thyroid is the parathyroid glands, little 4 beads or 6 beads, little BBs almost right behind there. So what I had was a tumor that was about the size of the thyroid gland. So you could see it in the neck. And so, and what was scary was that for about 6 months or so that I was trying all these different things that didn't have to do with diet and sleep and exercise, that in that time, the tumor actually doubled in size. So it was kind of a scary moment. So when I was going to water fast, I was like, well, this is kind of my last shot, and see what the medical doctor at True North says. So it decreased in size, and then ultimately, over the course of about a year or two, I stuck on the diet, did a couple more short fasts, and then eventually the tumor shrunk by about 80%, and Hashimoto's disease, the autoimmune condition, went away. So the blood tests to confirm and to diagnose Hashimoto's actually got better. So this was something that was very interesting to me. And I was thinking, well, if this works for me, who else could it work for? And so then I started to investigate it in a little bit more scrutiny with not just my own experience in mind, but trying to read about other people's experiences. And so that ultimately led me to True North Health Center and Dr. Goldhamer and Dr. Lisle's book called The Pleasure Trap. And reading that book and reading all the articles on the website, this is what actually propelled me to think, you know what, I just graduated engineering. It's not really that interesting to me. And this appears to be something that's incredible, and that it can help people actually get well. One thing that I was reading constantly from patients or from people who are writing anecdotes online and testimonials and these types of things, is that they had gone to their doctors and they had gone to several doctors and they had never gotten any help. And here they were doing something really, really unique, which is counterintuitive. Doing less actually resulted in more health for them. So that was it was really interesting to me. And so I ultimately decided, you know what, let me give this a shot and see what happens. So I applied for chiropractic school and got in very quickly, luckily due to my engineering degree, and then did some prerequisites for anatomy, biology, biochemistry, all those, organic chemistry. And then I reached out to Dr. Alan Goldhamer at the True North Health Center, and I said, I read your book, I read all your stuff, I really like what you guys do, and I'm actually thinking of doing something like this. Like I'd like to work as a doctor doing fasting supervision. What do you think? Can I come and just follow you around? And he said, well, we don't do that unless you're actually done with school and you've got your degree and you're ready to go into practice. So I don't know what happened. I guess the stars aligned and the full moon was out. Who knows? But he ended up agreeing to let me come up and just volunteer. Essentially, I remember telling him that I don't know anything about clinical thing, medicine or physical examination or anything clinical, but I told him that I promise I'll keep my mouth shut and my eyes and ears open. And I'll do whatever he wants, wash his dishes, whatever. So he let me come up, and those 3 weeks before I started chiropractic school were the greatest 3 weeks for a non-clinician, at that time that I'd ever seen. Like, I was watching, and I mean, I wasn't just watching people. I was going in, following the doctors and checking them and hearing their stories from start to finish, and they were getting well. And so this was, after that, the little tiny skeptic in me thinking that, oh, maybe this is oversold and maybe this, not worth the time, whatever, that was completely gone. And I thought, you know what, this is what I want to do. And ultimately, I asked Dr. Goldhamer if I could come back during my school breaks, and ended up going there every couple of months. Every time a semester ended, I would just, the day we had finals, I would just drive up to True North and do an internship for a week or two, eat some really healthy food, get good sleep. I mean, it was really a mecca. You go there, everybody goes to bed about at time when the sun sets, and there was really healthy food there, and I was working pretty hard, seeing a lot of things. And I ended up doing that for a few years during my school. And my last semester at school, I was able to get credits and actually move up to True North and work there full time. And then I ended up, Dr. Goldhamer asked if I could become a staff doctor there. And so he hired me to be a staff doctor at True North. And I was there for about 3 years. And ultimately, I wanted to come down to Southern California to start a fasting center, kind of my ultimate dream. And so recently I did that. So now we have the Fasting Escape Retreat Center here in Southern California. And it's basically a very, very small fasting center, about 15 times smaller than True North. But that's I guess I went off on a tangent. But and your original question was how I got into this. But yeah, there we go.
That's amazing story. And we're listening to this amazing story. I mean, I would say that you were a very dedicated kid, right? This geeky engineering mind, because not everyone at age 20, would start to research, what happens and look for natural healing mechanisms, right? And, research all that information. So that's quite impressive, what you did to yourself. And from one side, I can say, yes, that was a miracle, but I mean, I can also confirm that it's not a miracle. That's a natural reaction of our, body to self-heal, to activate self-healing capabilities. That's what happened to me as well. I've been a patient of Dr. Goldhamer for 10 days. I did a prolonged 10 days water fast, and I reversed my autoimmune condition. It was fasting and diet, and I feel wonderful. I also, practice, like a short fast. So that's incredible, just, how our bodies can heal itself, but it's also about the mind change. So I want to talk about that, explore a little bit about that. I know that you're a producer and creator of the Beat Your Gene podcast with Dr. Lisle. So tell me more about it. And can we really beat our genes? Because there is a perception, right, that whatever you've got from your mother and father, you got to live with that, right? So and your genes are bad, so there is nothing that you can do to make yourself healthy. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me just back up a little bit. So the podcast started because when I was at True North as an intern and as a doctor, one thing that I made sure to do that many people make sure to do when they're at True North is I blocked off 2 hours every time I knew Dr. Lisle was going to be talking. I would go there, I'd record I'd ask him if I could record, and I'd record him and listen to them at home and watch his DVDs. I mean, this is, I've never met a more brilliant mind willing to talk to me. And with regard, about anything really, the guy understands humanity. He understands nature. He understands so many things that I want to understand. And so through all of his talks at True North, and let me just give some background to people who haven't been to True North. Every day there's a couple of different doctors that lecture. There's a yoga class or something like that. Well, Dr. Lisle comes and he speaks, but he did something really interesting that I'd never seen any doctor do. Is he comes up, he has a whiteboard with some felt markers, and he says, "All right, anybody have any questions at all about anything?" And it's like people just ask him questions, and then he launches into a 30-minute explanation as to, where the answer comes from. And so, this is his mind. And so throughout all of these explanations for years, he would weave in the fundamental idea that our genetic code is trying to get us to do one thing, which is to spread our genes. Okay, so all the behaviors that we're engaging in and now I'm talking about a biological level here. So all the behaviors that we're engaging in is in order to propagate our genes, okay, to the next generation, And so however, sometimes those behaviors are going to be great for passing on your DNA, but they're not going to be that great for feeling the moods of happiness and satisfaction, life satisfaction. And so if we know that, and we are able to, this is where we call beating your genes. Okay, so we're doing a webinar right now, or a recording about diet and lifestyle. So one of the things that is beating your genes is Dr. Lisle and Dr. Goldhamer's book, The Pleasure Trap. So our genes are trying to get us to further our own DNA, okay, to propagate our genes. And one of the ways to do that is to get enough food, okay? And the most efficient way to get enough food is to get the most concentrated foods in the environment. Okay. And so this is going to be true whether you're in the Serengeti. It's going to be true whether you're in the Sahara Desert. It's going to be true whether you're in New York City, whether you're in Reno, Nevada, or Seattle, Washington, or Southern California. And so it makes no difference where you are. If you are a human, you're designed by nature to try to seek and search out and eat the most calorie-dense foods out there, the most efficient sources of calories. Now, it turns out that if you were in a remote jungle somewhere, you'd still have those instincts, but you wouldn't be able to act on them with regards to unnatural processed foods. So you wouldn't be able to do it, but you would still be looking for the most concentrated foods out there. Okay, those would still be the most efficient. And so the modern environment has actually created an opportunity for us to get as much calories as we possibly can. Okay, and as a result, we see people. This is why people are overweight and obese, and then they have health problems as a result of overeating these foods. Okay, this is not something that we would ever have seen, 1,000 generations ago. Okay, 1,000 generations ago or more, our ancestors were worried about not getting enough to eat. Okay, scarcity was the main game, and so there wasn't enough of anything. So nowadays, our genes were designed and were built through evolution from the times where there was scarcity all over the place. But in today's modern environment, we don't have scarcity. So our genes are still getting us to eat as much as we can, but it's leading us in a direction that undermines our health and our happiness as a result. And so if we understand this, then that's our best shot to beat our genes and then live a healthy and happy lifestyle in the face of all these distractions and all these problems with regards to food. So we don't talk about diet and lifestyle too much on the podcast because there's so much out there that we already talk about. But what the podcast is about, it's called Beat Your Genes, and we're on iTunes and Spotify and all these other podcast platforms. But what the podcast is about is Dr. Lisle. I ask Dr. Lisle questions from our listeners, and I follow up, and I kind of interview him every episode, and we have discussions about the human nature of different other problems besides just diet and lifestyle, but problems that have to do with happiness problems, depression, all these other things. But the domains that we're discussing are could be romance, could be dating, could be friendships, could be work. It could be family. There's, we're right now it's, people have probably just come out of the holidays and kind of, there's all going to be always family gatherings where family issues start to come out. And so there's all these different questions, relationship issues that come up. And so Dr. Lisle looks at this from the lens of how is it that our ancestors would have solved this problem, or what kind of emotions and feelings would kind of be in this realm. And then we try to figure out a solution that is based on that, looking at it that way. Because if we're looking at the wrong explanation, then it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how long we look at it. It's never going to be right. There's never going to be a solution. But we're just kind of looking at it through the lens of our ancient ancestors.
That's very interesting topic. And from what I'm hearing from you, that it's not just the diet, it's basically the entire lifestyle, right? That based on the several pillars. And I love Dr. Dean Ornish talk about that in his book, that it's, you know, the diet and sleep and also in exercising and, you know, and relationship and love that we make with, you know, with our partners, you know, with people. So it's everything comes together, right? So it's not just, you know, separate the diet. So, and then my next question is, what else is important after the diet? Is there anything else?
Yeah. Now it's the thing is there's a few of the things that people kind of important lessons. You know, it's hard to say what's the most important, but Dr. Dean Ornish and all the other doctors, they actually use science to at least guess. Okay, then that ends up being the best guess that we have. And diet looks to be major. This is a major component to health. I mean, it didn't have to be. It could have been air quality. It could have been sunshine. It could have been exercise. You know what I mean? Nothing in principle indicates that diet has to be the most important, but it actually is. But actually, there's one thing that's more impactful, that's smoking. Okay, so for example, if I have a patient struggling between getting off of cigarettes versus getting off of junk foods, if they think that they can only do one of those things, then the most important one would be is the smoking. Okay, but we don't have, you know, we don't think you have to choose between the two. And of course, a good diet makes for a great debate, and everybody's got an opinion nowadays, all sorts of opinions. But it turns out that the point of all these different studies, if we can look at it from many different perspectives, but the point is that a lot of unprocessed plant foods should be dominating the diet. Okay, mostly unprocessed, mostly plant foods. And we want to be limiting the extra flavor enhancers in there. So flavor enhancers meaning salty, sugary, oily type of kind of condiments that we're going to add to foods. But it turns out that besides diet, there's going to be a couple of others. Okay, and the others would be exercise. Exercise. You know, our ancestors exercised. They didn't have chairs, okay? And so they were exercising. They were getting up and down all the time. And, you know, recent hunter-gatherer data suggests that they would be running sometimes up to 16 miles a day, okay? And so, you know, so I've had patients that I've had in my office, and I say, you know what, I'd like you to exercise a little bit more. And they're worried that if they exercise too much, that they're going to get out of balance, okay? And so, what we keep in mind is that it's very difficult to get too much exercise unless you're at an elite level. Okay, and then you're very likely planning this out, and we don't have to worry about it. But the general recommendations are 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's kind of minimal. That's totally fine. You know, one of my patients asked me one time. She said, "Well, what if 10 minutes feels like 30 minutes? Does that count?" Okay. But it turns out that we can do strenuous exercise, you know, up to 30 minutes, an hour a day, daily exercise, and not get out of balance. Okay. So one thing that if you've got people who maybe have not exercised at all and haven't done so for a while, one thing that I start with is we don't have to make a grand production of going off to a class and, you know, driving through traffic and putting on our workout gear or anything like that. What we can start with is put on your favorite song and just dance in the living room for 5 minutes, okay, maybe 10 minutes. And then we get, what's that?
It makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, moods of happiness are going to be there when you're listening to stuff you like and when you're exercising. Another thing is sleep. So it turns out that sleep is crucial to recharging your body, essentially. So what your brain is doing as you're having thoughts and emotions all day long is that there's some debris that's being created. And when you sleep, this is your body's time to clear out that debris. And so if you don't have enough sleep, if you don't sleep enough, then you wake up with a dirty brain, essentially. Your body hasn't cleared off enough debris. And when you feel tired, when you wake up tired, that's what it is. It's a dirty brain. And so, you know, if you're waking up tired and you're drinking coffee, now you're getting into a disruptive cycle where you're not getting enough sleep, but then coffee blocks the signal from your brain that you're tired. And so now we're running into problems where we're chronically sleep deprived. And so those two go hand in hand, because if you're tired, you don't really feel like you're vigorous enough to exercise. And so those two things, if people are out of balance, the first two things I tell them is, if you know what diet you're supposed to be eating and you still can't do it, then why don't we try getting you some good quality sleep? And once you start to feel more energy after you wake up feeling refreshed, and now you start to feel like, hey, I can go exercise, all of a sudden the diet starts to fall in line. It's a lot easier to make those decisions when you're not tired. Sunshine and emotional support is also useful. But those are kind of the main things that we're looking at. And so it turns out, though, that there's one more thing. Okay, and there's one more thing, which is that if someone is caught in a bad cycle where they're not able to sleep very well, they're not able to exercise because they're chronically tired and they're addicted to the coffee, and maybe they might be addicted to cigarettes or alcohol or whatever it is, okay, and their diet's poor and they want to improve it, and they just can't summon the right circumstances to change all of that. Sometimes it's useful to kind of go away and escape, okay, where we can do all of that all at once, okay, with some support, and we lock the doors. Okay. And if we do that, then it turns out that we go through all of those withdrawals of the coffee and the foods that were the junk foods, and we get some sleep without the pressures of the modern day life. And if we do that, we go through all those withdrawals all at once, and we emerge feeling much better and much more clear and much more energy. And also the taste buds are much more sensitive, so that when you go back home, all of a sudden you can get back onto your good routine of eating healthy foods, and it actually tastes pretty darn good because your taste buds are sensitive enough. So the way we do that is you can go like to an Airbnb or a hotel or something, just lock yourself away. But that might be tough because there's all kinds of food and temptation and all these other things. And so sometimes if people have gotten so out of balance that now they have health problems, say like high blood pressure, overweight, obesity, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, those autoimmune conditions, then it turns out that sometimes we want to do it fast. Okay. And for that, we do a fast. And fasting is defined as the complete abstinence of all food and drink except for pure water in an environment of complete rest. And so it turns out that if we, everybody does some sort of fast. Okay, this is voluntary, going without food for a period of time. Everybody does this from dinner until breakfast. Okay, that's why it's called break the fast. And so during that time, the body heals and repairs itself, but without the burden of digesting food. So when we fast for longer than an evening, say several days or several weeks, it turns out the body kind of goes through restoring structure and function in a way pretty similar to rebooting a computer, okay, that's stopped working properly. So we see lots of different conditions: high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, metabolic syndrome, things like psoriasis, eczema, arthritis, body pain, fibromyalgia, autoimmune conditions, like you mentioned. These are primarily most of the time due to overconsumption of the rich foods, okay, refined, processed junk foods, animal foods. And so it turns out if patients can stop eating those foods, let their body clean up the mess, they get well. They're able to normalize all these symptoms. And so, just doing the fast is not enough. We want to stick to a healthy diet afterwards. And so this is part of the program that we're running here at Fasting Escape.
What is your success rate of improving those conditions that you've mentioned and even reversing them? And we touched on type 2 diabetes, you touched on high blood pressure, obesity, some food addictions.
Yeah, it turns out that because the conditions that respond the best to a diet and lifestyle change and a fast are the conditions that are caused by the food and overconsumption of these processed foods. And so, if someone comes in and says, I've got high blood pressure, they call me up, they schedule a consult, they call me up and they say, I have high blood pressure. I'm a little overweight. My doctor says I need to be watching my sugar. As I go through the history to make sure there's nothing else going on, I'm asking them, what are the typical foods that you eat? And if somebody's telling me that they're eating foods that are off the diet, so cookies, pasta, pastries, pastries, chips, animal foods, a lot of processed rich foods, butter, oil, it turns out they're going to get really good results. Okay? Your body is phenomenal at reversing these conditions if we set up the right conditions. Okay, so let's look at it this way. If I cut my hand, okay, and it's a pretty deep cut, there's nothing that we've discovered so far in medicine, science, or anything that can heal that cut faster than your body can heal itself. Okay, and so when you go to the doctor for the cut, what are they doing? Okay, are they healing that cut? I would say no, they're not healing that cut. What they're actually doing when they clean it out, they clean it out, they stitch it up, and they tell you to leave it alone. They're actually setting up the right conditions so that your body has the best chance and the best ability to heal itself. Okay, and so this is what we're doing with diet and sleep and exercise and lifestyle. Is we're not claiming that the broccoli is going to cure diabetes, or kale is going to cure high blood pressure. This is not the claim that I'm making. What we're saying is that if we do the things that your body's been designed to consume and to do naturally, then your body does what it does best, which is heal itself. And so if people are not too far gone, then they get phenomenal results. And so high blood pressure, I've never seen somebody with essential hypertension, which is primary high blood pressure. I've never seen somebody not be able to lower their blood pressure by changing their diet. And then if that doesn't work, then we do a water fast. Okay. I've never seen anybody with type 2 diabetes that's just due to type 2 diabetes. I've never seen them be able to not reverse it if they're able to stick to the diet long enough. And if they need to do a fast, they do a water fast. Same thing goes for overweight or obesity. Now, it turns out with overweight and obesity, which may also, overweight and obesity can manifest. This is one of the symptoms of a food addiction. And so if it turns out somebody is addicted to food, this is going to be, what we're going to want to be doing is getting them eating a healthy diet. Okay. Fasting by itself is not a treatment for overweight and obesity, because if you just go back, if you fast, lose a bunch of weight quickly, and you go back to eating the other foods, then you're going to end up gaining the weight back eventually. So we try to show people and educate patients here that when you go home, these are the kind of foods you want to be eating, and this is how you want to be thinking about these issues. How do we look at foods? Which ones are the most concentrated? Essentially, which foods are our genes trying to get us to eat, and how do we beat our genes? Okay, so there's a lot of these things. Psoriasis, eczema. These are, there's all kinds of autoimmune conditions that respond very well to diet change and fasting. And the reason they respond well is because we are removing the antigens from their gut that are causing, or at least they're contributing to this problem in the first place. So again, your body is designed to heal itself. And so we're simply just creating the best environment for it to do so.
Interesting. So can we get a little bit into the mechanics of fasting, into the biochemistry, and can you explain on different phases of fasting from what I've read in the literature? So there was, like 4 phases of fasting, and how basically our cells just heal themselves. So can you explore into that, and why fasting actually provides that self-healing mechanism to us?
Yeah. So whenever we start fasting, so again, fasting is defined as voluntarily going without food for a period of time. So this happens from dinner to breakfast. And so what sometimes people will notice when they wake up in the morning is they might be having a headache. Okay. If they've been drinking coffee, they have a headache when they wake up, and it only will go away unless it won't go away unless they drink some coffee. Okay. So the first part, when you stop eating the foods that are causing you problems, the first thing that happens is you start to go through some symptoms, these acute withdrawal symptoms of these foods. And so this can happen between dinner and breakfast. Sometimes the people are have a lot of withdrawal symptoms and very acute. It can happen, as quickly as from the first cup of coffee to, lunchtime. Okay. But what we see is the first couple of days of water fasting is people are going through what we call acute healing crises. Okay. So they go through these acute healing crises where they are simply withdrawing from a lot of the foods that they've been eating. And this is also using up some of the reserves in your body. The reserve tank is called glycogen stores. Okay, so your body stores some extra fuel in your liver and inside parts of your muscle cells to get you going in case you're without food, and that's what glycogen is for. And that can last anywhere from 1 day to 3 days, depending on the person's stores. And so as you're phasing out of and using up the glycogen, your body now starts to burn ketone bodies, okay? And it starts to get into what's called ketosis, where it's now favoring fat burning more than anything else, okay? However, your brain cannot use ketone bodies, okay? So what it needs, so it does take glucose, okay? It can use ketone bodies, but it does, but it needs some glucose, okay? It's a big user of glucose. And so there's a little bit of muscle tissue that's getting burned, very small amount, but what your body is mostly burning is fat, okay? So as this process goes on, your body starts to clean house essentially. So white blood cell count can go up a little bit, and the macrophages can go in. They start to essentially consume different things in your body, scar tissues, other things, and then the other thing that happens in the inflammation goes down. Okay, so there's inflammation, there's inflammatory markers that come down when you're fasting. And so as we go through the fast, we're watching this process unfold in a lot of different ways. One thing that's important is that as you go longer into the fast, now we start to worry about, is the person getting enough electrolytes? Are they getting low or are they not? And so can a person actually go for 10 days without anything other than water? Can the person go for 20 days? Can the person go for 30 days? Well, this gets to where we want to be fasting. How I was trained is that you fast everybody and you're supervising the patient's fasting. And the reason for that is that if you haven't supervised the person, if you haven't collected baseline data on the person before they started fasting, and you're not collecting blood tests on them while they're fasting. So, in this case, what I do is we check your blood every 7 days, check your urine every 7 days of a water fast. If we don't do that, then we don't know if the symptoms that somebody starts to go through while they're fasting are acute healing crises like withdrawals, or if there's symptoms that there might be some sort of imbalance or deficiency or something going on. So in addition, we're also checking blood pressure, pulse, etc. So if you don't check those things, it's hard to say, and you're kind of guessing. So some people, if they're relatively healthy, haven't been on any medications ever, and they're okay, they probably could get away with it, but it's just kind of risky to do that. So as people keep going throughout the fast, we're checking their blood, checking all their vital signs to make sure that they can actually last long enough to reduce their symptoms. So in the case of high blood pressure, the study that Dr. Goldhamer did called medically supervised water-only fasting in the treatment of hypertension. This was a study that said that the patients that did it, they all were able to reduce, to eliminate their medications, the ones who were on it, and they were all able to get normal high blood pressure. But the range of fasting days that they did ranged from 5 days to 28 days. That's a long range. And so somebody who's coming in and they have high blood pressure, if they need to fast for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, hey, that's what it takes. We would get rid of that high blood pressure and get the body back to health. But in the middle of that, we've got to be checking their blood and all the vital signs to make sure that they're going in the right direction. Type 2 diabetes is the same thing. Fasting is an excellent way to clear out the fat that's clogging the cells. The reason why there's insulin resistance. And so, many diabetics that I see within, a week or two of water fasting, their blood sugar is going from 300 or 400. Now it's down to 200, and sometimes it's going in the 100s. And so by the time they're done fasting and they're eating the food, they're getting pretty close to getting pretty normal results with regards to their blood sugar. And if they stick on the diet, not only can they lose weight, but they can reverse their diabetes. I just had a patient of mine who came here, almost about a year or so ago, maybe 6 months ago. And she had type 2 diabetes for, over 30 years. And her medical doctor, very supportive, but couldn't really offer anything other than medications for her condition. And the patient was very diligent and did exactly what her doctor was saying and was just wanting to reverse this diabetes. So she somehow stumbled upon Dr. Goldhamer, Dr. Lisle, found the fasting escape, all these, this kind of niche, the plant-based world. Ended up coming in, doing a water fast. Now, just to give you a reference, hemoglobin A1C is a long-term measurement of blood sugar. So it's like a 3-month average. So you don't want to be above, 6%. Then you're going to be diabetic. You're diagnosed as diabetic. Well, hers was 14%. Okay, so that means her blood sugars were consistently out of control for a long time. And the doctor was considering, doing more extreme measures, like maybe getting her on insulin, whatever. So she does close to a 30-day water fast, a little more than 3 weeks. Okay? Blood sugars, and she had high blood pressure as well. Okay? So she was obese. So blood pressure, she left here with a completely normal blood pressure. The blood sugars weren't normal by the time she left, but they went from being in the 300s and 400s to being in the mid 100s. Okay. And 3 months later, she gets a blood test to get her hemoglobin A1C, and it went from 14% to 7%. Okay. And the doctor didn't believe it, just couldn't believe. And the patient told me, I've been going to my doctor for 30 years. And in just, under 3 months, we've been able to reverse this, or at least, get close to reversing the diabetes. So, this is exciting. This is a really cool way to actually get people well. And I'm grateful that Dr. Goldhamer, allowed me to come in and learn from him. I'm grateful to Dr. Lisle to do the show with me. And this, I'm grateful that I found out about this technique of how to get people well and to provide that opportunity for people.
So you get those quite fascinating results with fasting. At the same time, you could feel pretty miserable during the fast. And I remember being at the clinic, and I've got some acute symptoms that lasted for several days. And without the supervision, I don't know if I would be able to handle that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fasting can be yeah, go ahead.
So it's very important that you are in a clinic and you basically supervised by the medical professional people.
Right. Particularly if you have longstanding problems and conditions, diagnoses. If someone say has the flu and they're sick and they just don't feel like eating for a day or two, and they just drink some water, broth, or whatever, that's different from having an autoimmune condition or high blood pressure. That if it gets high enough, this is a big problem, and high blood sugar where you can go into, you can have problems. So yeah, whenever someone's dealing with certain diagnoses and conditions, we want to make sure that we're careful, because fasting can be an intense and miserable experience. And so, but if we get everything in a row and we get everything done right and we do it correctly and we do it to protocol, then people get consistently outstanding results. I mean, this is I guess this is probably the best kept secret, and it's not that anybody's keeping a secret. It's just that some people just aren't paying attention in the healthcare world. But this is a well kept secret with regards, for getting people well. So hopefully more information is going to be coming out, and there is. I'm on the board of the True North Health Foundation, and we essentially we're funding studies to show the effects of water fasting on various different conditions. And so, as time goes on, there's going to be more and more data and more research to show what it is that we're seeing clinically, and then put it to the test with science so that we can definitively say and more confidently say exactly what's happening. And that way other people can reproduce our results rather than just taking our word for it.
Have you ever published any of your results?
Yeah. So me personally, yes. So I wrote a case study when I was in school, and this was a patient at True North when I was interning there. He had appendicitis and he didn't want to do surgery, and it was a type of appendicitis. It was called subacute, meaning it wasn't an emergency condition, and he really strongly wanted to avoid surgery. So he agreed with the medical doctor that, okay, we'll try some fasting, but you know, the medical doctor was very adamant about, if we have any symptoms that are, you know, turning you into a potentially emergency situation, we're stopping the fast, we're going to get surgery immediately. So, but he ended up getting well. You know, he did about a 10 days of almost about a week and a half of fasting, refed, did fine. And we had a 2-year follow-up. So we wrote that up in the Journal of it's JAMA, yeah, it's Journal of Alternative Complementary Medicine. That's what it was. We also had a case report of a lady who had a 16-year chronic headache due to trauma. So she had a commercial tent pole fall on her head and woke up, you know, after she passed out. And for 16 years after that, she had dull, achy headache. So she ended up fasting a while, getting some resolution of her symptoms after a couple of fasts. What's most exciting is what's most exciting for water fasting research is the older research is showing. I mean, Dr. Goldhamer did the research on high blood pressure and fasting, and he showed that with patients with high blood pressure, doing nothing like water fasting works better than doing anything. So exercise, for example, for high blood pressure, it can reduce your blood pressure by about 5 points. Okay. Reducing your alcohol intake can reduce it by about 7 points. Taking drugs for high blood pressure can reduce it by 12 points. Just lowering your, eating a healthy diet and lowering your salt intake can lower it by about 17 points. So this is like a McDougall program. Okay. But water fasting was shown in this particular study to lower your blood pressure by about 37 points on average. Okay. 37 points, that's triple the medication. And the side effects weren't even close to the negative side effects of medication. The side effects were increased perception of taste buds so that the healthy food actually tastes good, weight loss, you know, lower, you know, all these other things that were going on besides just lowering the blood pressure. So that was a really exciting one. That's one that's incredible, because 174 consecutive patients, you know, they didn't select which ones did well. It's like they just took all 174 consecutive ones, put the study. The most recent one that I think is most exciting is what we call the fasting safety study. And this was a compilation of the charts of True North Health Center over, you know, several years. And so they documented to see just how safe is it to fast somebody. And they documented all the charts that they selected, and they were trying to categorize what kind of symptoms do people have when they fast. Is it grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 and 4 were very serious. And it turns out that over all the thousands of charts that they had, that there was one serious case. And this was an elderly person with serious complicated medical history. And so it essentially shows that fasting is safe when done correctly, and when done according to protocol, when you're actually screening people out and making sure that the people who are going to get a good result are the ones fasting and not just fasting just anybody. So that's exciting. The most exciting one as far as case studies go was published in the British Medical Journal a couple of years ago. I believe it was 2015, 2016. This was a lady who was diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma, okay, so blood cancer. And she had gone to her doctor. They found out she had stage 3 lymphoma, and the oncologist told her that, you know, we really don't have a lot of treatment for you. So the only thing we can do is just watch and wait. Okay. So every 3 months, come back and we'll see what happens. Well, so she went to True North, did a 3-week water fast, refed. And during this fast and the refeeding, they palpated, they were feeling her abdomen, found that the tumors, the masses in her abdomen substantially reduced in size, to the point where she goes back to her medical doctor and he said, well, you know, this is incredible. You're okay. You know, like we don't have to watch you every 3 months. We can watch you once a year. So she did a CT scan, and the CT scan follow-up confirmed that this is actually, that the lymphoma actually reversed. So, and then they got a 3-year follow-up on this. So this was out of True North Health Foundation, the 501c3. So it's incredible. Right now, we're at the foundation, we're looking for, I think we're doing a case series of patients with lymphoma and see how they respond to water fasting. And we're also looking for patients with lupus, so we can do a more formal study with patients with lupus. So there's lots of exciting things out there. Clinically speaking, we see fasting as an intervention have really interesting results. And so it's really cool to watch when we can run some experiments and tease out some of the variables that's impossible to tease out during clinical practice. But once we do that, we're going to know a heck of a lot more, and a lot of other doctors will know a lot more as well.
That's such an incredible stories and information, and thank you for sharing that, because it shows that the chronic conditions and serious conditions can be reversed with fasting and just the clean plant-based diet. So that's a fascinating story. And I have a last question to you, Dr. Nathan. So what are some of the most important lessons that people need to learn in health?
Well, I guess I can just say one thing, which is if you know what you need to be doing, and the environment is such that it's just difficult to do, uh, keep practicing. Okay, there's a bit of a myth I hear sometimes. Not everybody believes this, but I hear it sometimes. Patients will tell me. I hear it once in a while, where people will tell me that oh, I need to change my diet and lifestyle, and I'm going to decide, and I'm going to choose that tomorrow I'm starting. Okay, this is, I believe, is a little bit misguided. Okay, it's actually in conflict and contradiction with how we develop skills in any other area of life. So if we have a professional athlete, they didn't decide to become a professional athlete. Okay, what they did is every day from the time that they were kids, they practiced and they practiced and they practiced, and if they weren't getting the results they wanted, they got a coach, and the coach watched them and told them how to practice a little bit differently, and they did this over and over and over and over again until they couldn't do it wrong. Okay. Now, changing your diet and lifestyle is not quite like building a physical skill and a mental skill, but it's close. It's what it is it's something where we've got skills that we're going to need to have when we're trying to get healthy. One of them is cooking. Okay. So, I tell patients here is when you're going home, set aside some time to cook some of your favorite dishes and practice cooking them so that you can whip them up quickly. Okay. Nothing is worse than coming home from work, being tired, having to deal with a lot of other things later on in the evening, and then you only have 30 minutes to cook something. And it's like, well, forget it. I'm just going to go out and get something salty and fatty, because it's not only does it taste good, but it's going to be quick. Okay. Whereas if you've done some of the homework and you've practiced and you're able to whip up a pretty decent meal within 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is, now you've just now exercised that skill in a situation, very similar to game day. Okay. And so we don't need to be perfect, but what we want to be doing is practicing the right things. Okay. If you've got a pre-bedtime routine, there's something to practice. Okay. And so we've got, exercise. There's what we're practicing. Okay. So, if you don't know what to do for exercise and you're dancing in the living room, that's fine. But if you find a sport or some sort of exercise that's fascinating to you, there you go. All of a sudden now you've got some motivation to do more exercise. So what I would say is that we need to be looking at this thing, that it's not I go 100% and never go back. This is a recipe for disaster. Okay. I don't know too many people that eat this way or live this way 100% at all. Okay. And so what we're trying to do is set up our environment so that healthy living is easier than unhealthy living. Okay. So you can imagine if your pantry is filled with junk foods and your freezer is filled with, junk foods and vegan ice creams, and your fridge is filled with all the cheeses and the, vegan butter and all those things, and animal foods and all this other thing, it's going to be incredibly difficult to eat a healthy lifestyle, particularly when things are tough. But if you clean up your environment and now you have to exercise energy to actually go out and get something that you're not supposed to eat, you're going to make better decisions more often. So, the thing I would say is that you keep practicing, keep trying, and keep moving, keep moving. This is what we try to do when we're kind of stuck in a rut. Okay, is we just go back to the fundamentals. Okay, so you cook some food, practice the cooking, store it in your fridge so you got a few meals ahead of time. Do some exercise, get some good sleep, and if you need to, then you come and do a water fast if you need to kind of get out of that cycle and break that cycle and get some momentum back. And if you've got a pretty serious condition, then you come and do a water fast for a little bit longer. But one thing I heard one time at True North is somebody said, well, if you could have done it on your own, you would have done it already. Okay. Now, this is not to say that anybody can't do it on their own. It's just that the world is filled with people who are trying. I can only assume that people who are trying their very best. Okay. So if you're trying your very best and you're still not able to reverse a disease that has been caused by overconsumption of these foods, this is where we get some help. Okay, through with what you're doing or fasting, something like that. This is where we get some help. Every professional athlete's got help in their life. Every person in every industry gets help. So there's no shame in that, and this is what we're here to do, is to help and to get things back on track.
Yes, I so much resonate with what you just said. And I think that the more dedicated people for helping themselves, those people who actually experience some of the chronic illnesses, and they so eager to improve their conditions. And as Dr. Goldhamer said, it's so easier to work with such patients. But for other people, I think if they acquire the knowledge and if they understand, so they can create a mindful choices in their life, and so they can live a life of full vitality and actually live a long life. I really felt so emotional with the video clip that Dr. Goldhamer puts up front in one of his lectures when he shows this an old couple living the lifestyle, and being healthy, or, the same couple in a hospital and, really stuck to the bed. So that's such a powerful message that you can actually take control of your health and live a healthy life.
It's fascinating that we are able to do something in this age that we were never able to do back in the time of our ancient ancestors, which is we can affect our health in a way that we never thought possible. So if you got an infection 1,000 generations ago, like, it was pretty much a death sentence. Okay, if you got some sort of disease, there was nothing you could do. Today, if we can reverse a lot of these conditions, and but it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, it is. It's probably the hardest thing that we can be doing, is to go against our instincts, go against our genes. Okay, but it may also be the most rewarding.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nathan, for being with us today. I really have been enjoying our conversation, and what you bring to this world is truly remarkable. And I just want to mention for those who've been listening and watching us today, so if you have a chronic condition or you just want to reset your health by changing your taste bud and start eating healthy, so register for a free consultation with Dr. Nathan Gershfeld at the fastingescape.com, and I believe that URL is www.meetme.so/fasting escape.
Yeah, you can go to fastingescape.com, and if you're interested in doing a consult and seeing if maybe doing a fast is right for you, there's a section on the website you can actually register for a free consult. It's under registration, and then we can chat and see what we can come up with.
Right. Give yourself a hope for a healthy life. I'm your host, Angelina Kardash, and thank you for watching us today.